Hi, and welcome to the 12th House Podcast. I'm Michelle, the founder and head witch in charge, HWIC, at Holisticism, and I'm so excited that you're here. Today, we are talking about building community. And more interestingly, we're talking about all the mistakes that I made when I was building Holisticism and what I would do differently if I could go back in time, step into the Wayback Machine, and go back to before I started Holisticism, or what I would do if I was starting from scratch, if I had to begin from zero and I had no budget and I was just getting going, all the things that I would do to build a thriving community quickly. But before we get into this week's episode, let's go over the galactic weather forecast. Our galactic weather forecast is the portion of the show where we talk about what's going on in the ethers, in energetic ethers. We look at astrology, the human design calendar, cycles and seasons, and what's going on sociopolitically across the globe and the galaxy to kind of pick up on like what's the vibe, what's out there in the ethers. So today is Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020. If you're listening to this episode the day that it drops, it is election day. If you're listening to it after, hope you're cool out there. It's a big day. The energy is intense, very intense, for everyone. And it doesn't help that Mercury stationed direct today. You would think it would help because you're like, that's great, Michelle. That means that Mercury's not retrograde anymore. And I would say, that is correct, my dude. But also, Mercury retrograde shadow is a thing. Two of my most favorite, most trusted, I just said philosophers in my brain, but they are philosopher astrologers. I'm gonna call them that. Amby Kavanaugh and Emily Rousseau both say that the Mercury retrograde shadow period can be more tumultuous than actually Mercury retro. And that's why I don't really know. I kind of feel like it's because Mercury kind of like got cozy retrograde, it stayed a while and then it had to get up and move and station direct. And it's kind of like all this debris got kicked up when it moved back into another position. And it's kind of pissed that things aren't going back to normal. So yeah, guard your loins, man. Like the communication might not be so great over the next couple days. The electronics, be careful. Don't spill your water or your wine on them. And just don't get too cozy. Don't get too comfortable because Mercury is still in its shadow period for the next 7 to 10 days. But I have some like slightly better news. The moon will be in Gemini today, and it's on the North Node, interestingly enough. And it's squaring Neptune. So what does that mean? Let's unpack that. So the moon is aligned with the North Node, and the North Node in astrology represents fate and destiny in the future. Side note, that is why we named our membership the North Node, because it's all about stepping into your purpose and your incarnation in this lifetime. Okay, side note over. And because the moon is aligned with the North Node, the moon represents intuition and emotions and our feelings, right? And our dreams. And the North Node represents our future. So when they're together, when they're on top of each other like this, it might feel like we can intuit what our future looks like. We can see our future in our mind's eye more clearly or more easily. But slightly not bad news, but not good news. This situation, this moon North Node situation is squaring Neptune. And we love Neptune. No shade on Neptune, but a square is an uncomfortable position. So there's a little bit of like discomfort between these entities, the moon and Neptune. And it could mean that we're kind of in like Neptune's sort of haze, right? Neptune is a bit odd and it's hazy if you just look at the planet's atmosphere. It's very hazy, right? It doesn't have like a hard boundary because it's gaseous. And so we might feel like we're in an emotional haze, like we kind of can't see through everything. It's not quite opaque, but it's also not clear what our future holds and what we're visioning for ourselves. And if you combine that with the fact that it's election day, it might feel like we can't see the future. And that's true. Like we can't. We can't see the future. We can create the future, But at the end of the day, like, we don't actually know what's going to happen. We get hints, but there's still a bit of mystery, which is sort of lovely. That's the lovely and terrible thing about being a human. So if you have a little bit of anxiety around today, that's normal, and not to minimize it, but you shouldn't feel alone and you shouldn't feel weird. But maybe instead of hoping that the anxiety will alleviate when we have clarity, when we know who wins, or some other deciding factor that you've associated with clarity, maybe instead we can reframe that to know that we're always going to be a little unclear, or at least for the next couple of days, we're not going to have the clarity that we desire. So, is there a way to sort of abate our anxiety and ease our anxiety and our fears without knowing exactly what the future holds for us? And I'm positive that you brilliant beings out there will figure out what that means to you and what that looks like for you. But that's what's up with the galactic weather forecast today. And also, it's a beautiful day to go vote. And that's it. On with the rest of our episode. Today, we are talking about building community and all the mistakes I made when building Holisticism's community. Because, oh man, this is a really important topic. Really, 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 really important. Whether you're an intuitive business owner trying to find your people to sell your product or your service to, or you're just someone who's trying to cultivate connection in this really bizarre time, the skill of building community is one that's so valuable and also really rare. Most people are great at building audiences. That's a skill that is really highly valued in this time because we have giant social media platforms that reward large audiences to a degree. And there's a difference between an audience and a community. And this is absolutely no shade on people who have giant audiences or having an audience. There's nothing wrong with having an audience. In fact, you have an audience before you have community. That's like, the sort of bigger circle. The outside circle is the audience, and then there's a circle inside of that circle, and in the middle circle is your community, right? So the key difference between an audience and a community is that an audience is a parasocial relationship, meaning it's a one-sided relationship. Your audience on Instagram, on TikTok, on any of these platforms, while you may be able to have a sort of high-level relationship with your followers, the likelihood that you're able to build actual relationships with people is pretty slim, and personal relationships with people. It's always going to be on these bigger platforms that are made to actually reinforce parasocial relationships, that there's a boundary and that you're sort of on the pedestal, or the brand is on the pedestal, and the people, the audience, are underneath them. And community is the opposite. And when we're building community, we're actually flipping that on its head. We're making our community members the heroes of our story. We're lifting them up, and we're learning from them. And I think the key to building community is being in relationship and listening to people. And when you have a community, it is so, so, so valuable because community cares about you. Like, that's what community care is, period. That's why we want to move towards a community care model, right? As opposed to rugged individualism that capitalism continues to perpetuate, which is super dangerous. We want to build communities of people who care about each other. And when you build a community first, as opposed to building a product or trying to build an audience of people who worship your product, you're actually putting yourself in such an amazing position to be successful or to get whatever it is that you want. Like, let's throw the word success out the window because it kind of doesn't mean anything. But when you have a community, you have so much freedom because you can do anything that you want. You can take that community and you can make a product or a service for them, or a brick and mortar space or an experience. You also can just facilitate relationship building and help people within your community help each other. It's so cool what comes from community organically. And really, that comes from us decentering ourselves as leaders and elevating and uplifting the members of our community, enrolling them in what we're up to, and saying, like, come join me and build this with me, build this beside me, as opposed to watching me build it and then, buying my product later. So that's all to say that if you don't have an idea for a business, but you have this itch to get started on something, build your community first, because they're going to tell you what you need to make, what product will be amazing for them, what problem you can solve for them, the service that they're dying for. And that's going to save you so much time and money in the long run. And finally, community, even if you don't build a product around it, is really, really valuable because lots of people don't know how to build community. So if you have an incredible, thriving community, people are going to want to draft off that. And that can lead down so many roads. You could get acquired. You can have people who want to sponsor you or who want to pitch to your community or who want to just get in front of your community. And they'll do that by, trying to build a relationship with you. So you really have a lot of ways that you can move. You have so much freedom, as I said, when you focus on building community instead of an audience. And I know all my students are like, Michelle, you say this all the time, but it's true. When you have a community, you can do no wrong. You are setting yourself up for success. And you're also setting yourself up for a really rewarding, intuitive experience where you're leading with your heart and your intuition, your gut, as opposed to leading with ego, which would be building a super big audience, people who worship you, right? Again, no shade to audiences. We kind of need them, but more importantly, we need community. I would rather have a community of 500 people than an audience of 50,000 people, because that 500 person community is just, it's exponentially valuable. So, okay, now that I've convinced you that you need to build a community, how the F do you do it? Because we're really great at building audiences because we can throw money at the problem of building an audience, right? We can engineer that and we can do it in a way that's not organic at all, right? We can fake it till we make it with an audience. Community is different. It has to be organic. It is like grassroots effort is building community. So how do we do that and not lose our minds and also make the best use of our time and energy if you're an intuitive business aspiring owner, or you're just someone who wants to bring people together in connection? Well, I'm going to tell you all the things that I did wrong. And I want to just like pull myself I want to like step outside of myself for a second and say, I made a lot of mistakes. I make a lot of mistakes all the time. Like I made a mistake like 2 hours ago, and that's okay. That's part of being an intuitive person. That's part of being an innovator and a visionary and a dreamer. You're going to make mistakes. And there are a lot of things that on paper look like the wrong choice that I made that were really intuitive that actually ended up being the right choice. So I want to give my younger self, kudos, because she did a lot of things to kind of be a rebel. And she also did some things because she really believed she wanted to do things differently than everyone else. And it ended up working out. So above all, I would say trust your gut and your intuition. And also alongside that, I hope you can take from some of my biggest mistakes and learn from them. I have a really long list of all the things that I did wrong. The first thing is I was too timid. When I had the idea for Holisticism 3.5, almost 4 years ago, it's kind of like Muse like knocked on my forehead and was like, hey, dummy, here's a great idea. Don't fuck it up. And then dropped Holisticism into my brain. And I didn't know. I just woke up with this word in my mind, on my tongue. And it felt like the perfect word to describe my personal philosophy that I'd been searching for. I wanted to say, I believe in living holistically and making decisions holistically. And the word holism exists, but it didn't really feel like the right definition of what I wanted to express. And so holisticism felt better. And then the more I thought about it, it kind of sounded like holistic mystic realism. And those were all things that were part of my sort of Venn diagram of beliefs. I wanted to look at the world holistically, but I'm hella mystic. And I'm also a realist. I love using intellect, and I'm an optimistic skeptic, as I think you might know. So there we go. There was this name, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. And I knew I didn't want to build a business, but I wanted to do something with this idea. So I thought, I'll start a newsletter, I'll start an email. And I will say, past version of me, this is a win. We could put this as a W. Like, well done. Because building an email list is one of the best things you can do. So often when we first get started, we want to build on platforms that already exist. Things like Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, you name it, right? Like that all totally makes sense because we feel like there are more people there. It's easier to be found. And, in some ways that's true. But when you're building your baby, your community on someone else's territory, you're kind of playing with fire because you don't actually own what you're building. And the rules can change on you really, really quickly. Most of these platforms get 98% of their revenue through ad sales, which means that they are marketing platforms. They're not social networks. And eventually, in order to grow in them, you have to pay to play, meaning you have to run ads in order to grow. That's just how these businesses work. And, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's important to know as someone who's getting started and maybe someone who doesn't have a really big budget that eventually, in order to leverage this platform, you're probably going to have to pay some money for it. And that might not be something that you think about right now that you feel is important, but as you continue to grow, and if that's the only place where you can connect with your people and the only place where you're able to communicate with them, then you're really limiting yourself and you're potentially, shooting yourself in the foot if something, God forbid, happens with that platform. If Instagram goes out, if TikTok gets banned from the United States, if YouTube decides to remove your profile, right? So getting and starting an email list either alongside other social platforms and really driving people and trying to get their emails, or just starting with an email list is, in my opinion, the smartest thing that you can do because no one can take that email list away from you. And because email is an amazing way to build an actual two-sided relationship. You can reply back to people, you can share really intimately with people, and you get to know a lot about them through their behaviors, through what they click on in the emails that you send, through the way that they reply to you and respond to you, and also when they unsubscribe. So you can learn so much from building an email list. And when you have an email list, that again is from just a sort of logistical perspective is really, really valuable. In fact, if you decided to at some point get rid of your community, you could sell your email list to somebody if you wanted to and make a lot of money. You could effectively get acquired. And you don't have to have a huge business to do that. You can have a really healthy business, a smaller business, or a smaller community, and still have that happen. So, starting with an email list is a check in the wins department. So I think I did that. I did that pretty well. But I was way too timid. I sent my first email to 100 of my friends. I was so nervous. I think I said it's totally okay if you unsubscribe. It won't hurt my feelings. Obviously nobody did, but I was really embarrassed. And I asked for people to maybe if you could just recommend one person who might like this email. Because I was so shy and I didn't really believe in myself. I thought, I don't have anything of value to give, but I have this idea and I know it's bigger than me. And so I have to do something with it, but I'm not smart or interesting or, I don't have all the wisdom in the world. What would people possibly want to learn from me? What could I possibly give to them in value? And that was wrong, but that was where I was at that time. So I was very timid and I was scared to ask people to help me. And I wish that I'd been braver and that I'd asked people to help me sooner. Because here's the thing, spoiler alert, people want to help you. They really do. And that is a key component to building community. So if you have a notebook, write this down. Asking your community and enrolling your community and helping you is one of the best things you can do. It invites people in. It asks them to take ownership in what it is that you're doing. And when people feel like they have ownership over a community, like they're part of it and they're an important part of it, they care so much about it. They care so much more about it and they want to see it be successful. So they'll go out of their way to help you. because you're co-creating something together, and that's really cool. It also takes some pressure off you because like if you mess up, it's okay. Other people have your back, and that's lovely. So I wish I'd asked people a little bit more like, how I would now. And said like, "Kate, can you help me? I would love your help with this." So I started with this super small list, and I also was too timid, as I said. The second mistake that I made is that I made it way too hard for people to say yes. So I had this form on my website, on my baby website. I had not a real website, I just had a landing page. And you couldn't just join the email list. You had to like go through all these hoops. You had to fill out this form that like told me about who you were. And then I had to like approve you and like send you an intro email. And then I got on a phone call with like every single person who joined the list, or I met them for coffee. So I had like 1,000 coffees. I'm not exaggerating. I did at least 1,000 interviews in that first year with people. And that meant that I was sometimes doing like 6 per day, and it was exhausting. But I learned a lot. I mean, let me go back. I made it too hard for people to say yes. That was so much stuff to do. If I could go back in time, what I would do instead is build a landing page that was really simple to say yes to. Like, you guys, you got to make it easy for people to say yes to you. So make it really clear what you stand for, who you are, and what you're delivering in terms of value to people. That can be 3 sentences. Just make it really, really clear. And then be like, here's what you get when you join. Here's this valuable thing, whether it's a lead magnet, like a really valuable PDF, or a cool class that you're letting them in on, or a really cool top secret community. That's valuable too. But don't make it difficult for them to like jump through hoops in order to join you. Welcome them with open arms. What I would have done instead was made that landing page really simple, put in your email, click here to submit, and then I would have sent a follow-up email that said, "Hey, I want to learn more about you. Fill out this survey, and if you want, let's hop on a phone call." Because again, we're going to go back to the wins column, because although I made it really difficult for myself and others, I learned so much from those client interviews. Man, I don't know where I would be right now if I didn't have to do 1,000 calls with people when I first got started. I'm still friends with a lot of the people that I hopped on the phone with who were complete strangers to me, who I'd never talked to, and who many of whom I've never met in person, which is amazing. And that was also an opportunity for me to actually enroll people in what I was doing, because sometimes they need to hear it from you, and see your face and listen to your voice as opposed to just seeing you on the internet. And being able to make that personal connection was when I met some of our super fans. And when you've got super fans in your community, that's like, oh my God, that's like when in Mario Kart, when you go through like the super speed and it like launches you into oblivion, but it's amazing. And you're like, yes, that's what super fans do to your community growth. And super fans are not influencers. They're not like the super popular people that you would expect, although, they're popular. They are like the homegrown heroes, the people who maybe have like 500 Instagram followers, but they just know everyone and everyone likes them. It's sort of inexplicable. And they love to be first movers. They love to be early adopters, to find a trend or to find a person and to share that with their community, their group of people. And they really take joy and pleasure in that. So finding your super fans, you can't really pluck super fans out of existence. You kind of have to cultivate them. And the way that you do that is through creating connection and empowering people, again, to take ownership and saying like, oh my gosh, you would be such a great ambassador for what I'm building. Do you have any amazing friends who you think should join this community or this movement, or who would want to jam with me on this idea? And getting those people on your team, first and foremost, having people who believe in you and your vision is so empowering and will give you all the fuel that you need on those nights where you're like, what am I doing? Because you'll remember those super fans that you have and you'll be like, oh yeah, okay, great. If they believe in me, I can believe in myself for like 2 seconds. And they're going to grow your community organically. They're going to do the hard work for you. And that is so cool. And that is how communities really grow quickly and how they can grow exponentially when they have super fans, because you're one person and you can do anything, but you can't do everything. So this is a little bit like delegation. Use your super fans to delegate your growth. and to grow more quickly and to still grow organically, to create that real communal vibe. Superfans are the best. Then my next mistake was that I did something that I actually really hated in pursuit of growth. And I think that we all walk down this path, or maybe we don't. Maybe it's just me, where we're like, oh, I really should do that thing. Like, I really should run Facebook ads, or I really should go to that party, or I really should talk to that person, or I really should raise money. For me, it was, I really should do in-person events because everyone I talked to wanted to do in-person events and they wanted to see each other. And I was like, that sounds amazing in theory, but I'm an introvert. Like, I'm so tired. Like, no, a group of people together, that's my nightmare. But everyone wanted it. And so I thought, I got to do this thing. And I did, and I didn't like it. I really didn't like it. I loved meeting people individually and getting to hug them and talk to them, but trying to host a big group of people was really stressful to me, and I didn't enjoy it, and it took the fun out of it. And also I had to do so many logistical things that again, I did not enjoy, if you couldn't tell, and that took away my attention and my focus from what really mattered and what was important to me. And at that time, that was building really good content. So, and continuing to invest in building in building my community and the people in my community. So don't do something that you hate just because you think that you should. Even if it's what I'm telling you to do today, what I'm saying I recommend doing, if you're like, no, I really hate that, don't do it, dude. Like, you got free will, trust your intuition. And I mean, worst thing that happens is that you try it and you're like, yep, nope, not for me, washing my hands of that. But decide quickly. Don't sort of luxuriate in the things that you're really hating or not jiving for you. Because again, you are limited in the time and the energy that you have. And you want to invest that time and energy in the things that light you up and make you feel amazing. Because that, above all, is what's going to grow your community. Because that is electric and it's magnetic. And how could people not want to be part of a community where someone in the center of it feels like that, right? So I wouldn't do in-person events. They took a lot of time and I had to meet a lot of people and it was really stressful to me. But events are a really great way to grow your audience. So the way that we do this now is we hold virtual events. And this is so much easier for me. Also, like, it's COVID, so we don't really have an option. But we started hosting virtual events like 3 years ago after those first 6 months where I was like, I can't do this anymore. And moving into the virtual space made it so much easier for me to actually do these events, to deliver valuable content to people and to build our community. The next mistake that I made is that I tried to stay anonymous. I tried to be like I thought I was Banksy or something. Like, I don't know why, but I really didn't want my name associated with this business or this idea. It wasn't a business. I didn't want to make it a business. And I think that was just me being shy, and scared and afraid of failing, probably. And if I associated myself and my name and I put it out there for the world for people to see and it didn't go the way that I wanted it to go, then people would see my failure. And I was really scared of that. But I wish that I had put myself out there more in the beginning. In fact, we didn't even have an Instagram for the first 6 months that Holisticism existed, which I know is like a cardinal sin in the digital age, but it just didn't feel right to me. And part of that, I think, was my shyness. But I think the other part was my intuition telling me that I really needed to invest in real relationships, in 5D relationships, not the 2D relationships on the internet during that time of Holisticism's growth. I don't regret starting my Instagram late. It's fine. But I do regret not showing my face and not putting my name on the bottom of those emails in the beginning, because people relate to people. They don't relate to brands. They don't even really relate to ideas. They relate to the people attached to those brands and ideas. So if you want to build community, community is human. So you need to be the human at the center. I wish I'd known that and I'd been brave enough to do that earlier. But I learned eventually, and I still need to remind myself of these things sometimes. So now I want to say like what I would do now, just really quickly, if I had to start a platform from scratch. First, I would so if you have a pen and pencil, this is the time to take notes. What I would do from starting from scratch, I got nothing. I got no budget. I don't have a website. I don't have anything. I just have this idea. I would get really, really clear on how I wanted people to feel when they interacted with me or my community. When I first started Holisticism, I wanted every email to feel like a virtual hug. And that was so helpful in guiding the way that I talked to my community and how I made them feel and the content in those emails even. So I would get clear because when you know how you want to make people feel, it makes a lot of the other decisions a lot easier. And then I would get a really basic website set up, which I will say we did with the first version of Holisticism. All you need is really a landing page or like an about page, and that's it. You don't need to go fancy. You don't need to hire a graphic designer to like pimp your website. That is not necessary in the beginning. You just need a place, a little corner on the internet. Get a Squarespace, make it yourself. You can always fix it later. Don't spend a lot of time and energy on it, like because we can get stuck in this loop of like perfecting and fixing and moving the margins and changing the font, and like none of that shit matters. It really doesn't. It doesn't as much as you think, at least. So just get a basic website up and make a landing page where it's really easy for someone to add their email to your list and give them a reason to add their email to your list. Make something like a lead magnet, which is an asset that's really valuable that has to do, that's something that your ideal client or your ideal community member would want. For example, if I were going to make a lead magnet for a tarot website, let's say I wanted to start something all about the tarot, maybe my lead magnet would be something like 5 delicious spreads that you can make with your tarot cards to predict your 2021 year, right? Like I totally just pulled that out of my butt, but that could be a great lead magnet. That is an incentive for people to add themselves to your list because you're giving them value. The next thing that I would do is actually focus on the value that I'm delivering to other people. When we first get started and we are small, we feel like we don't have a lot of value to exchange with others because we don't have a large community, we don't have a large audience, we don't feel important. But that's not actually true. You can deliver value in so many ways. First way is through teaching. Teach what you know. Honestly, like you might think that it's basic and simple and easy, but for someone else out there who's never run a 5K or who's never made an Instagram profile before, or who's never read tarot cards before, or who's never tried to eat gluten-free before, even the most basic and simple is going to be enough for them. That's a level up from where they are now. So teach what you know and also teach from your unique perspective. Even if you're not the penultimate expert, if you don't have a PhD in the industry that you're trying to get into, you do have your perspective, and that is valuable. Inspire. That's another way you can give people value. Think about how many Instagram accounts you follow that are purely inspirational or aspirational. Think about how many influencers or celebrities really offer just inspiration to us. That is something that we are in dire need of in these days. So what you can deliver is a super short email every week that gives 3 inspirational quotes. That sounds so cheesy, but honestly, I bet you a ton of people would sign up for that. Another piece of value that you can give is curation. When I first started Holisticism, I felt like I had nothing valuable to share, even though I had I was a certified holistic nutritionist and I had all this experience in tech and running businesses and marketing and branding and all this delicious things. I was like, what do I have? I'm not valuable. I can't teach anyone anything. Not true. But I learned that over time. It's okay. But what I did know is that I had good taste and I could read really fast. So, and I knew I could read faster than a lot of people. So I put together the best links on the internet around wellness, mysticism, and real life. So things like politics. And that was what the newsletter was. And it still kind of is. It's evolved a lot, but that's what I was giving people. I was saving them time and energy by curating something for them. So curation is a type of value. You could even make a membership that is simply curation. I mean, that's what monthly subscription boxes are, right? They're just a curation of products that you send to people and they pay you money for them. So that's definitely a viable business idea. And then finally, another piece of value that you can give is surprise. Information is surprising. Like when we learn something, it's a surprise to us. It's new to us, if you really think about it. So if you make them say, huh, I didn't know that, or wow, or whoa, that is valuable. Think about how often we are not surprised by the world around us. So delivering surprise or delight is another piece of value that you can give. And then I would talk to people. If I was continuing down this path, I think this is another thing that I did right, but I would be a little bit more strategic this time around in my new imaginary business. I would ask people what they wanted, what their biggest problems and pains were, and what the things were that gave them the most pleasure. And I would listen a lot more than I talked. And I would just let people go. And I would try to figure out what are the connecting ideas between this web of people, this community? What brings them all together? And how can I facilitate that? And then I would start building that email list. And remember, build build what you can own as opposed to building your castle on someone else's land. And I would build that email list by continuing to make high value content or providing value to people. I would make lead magnets, like I said. So on that landing page, I would make sure that there was something of valuable value to exchange with someone else. And then what I would actually do is borrow other people's audiences. So instead of trying to build my community from scratch or from really bootstrapping it, really relying so heavily on members or my community to like enroll their community, I would do that still, but I would reach out to people who were similar to me in my industry. I would create relationships with them, people who had a similar worldview and perspective on what we both had in common in our industry or what we talked about. And I would draft off of their audiences. I would pitch an idea that was valuable to them. And then I would say, can I teach this to your audience, or can I get in front of your community and talk about this? Because if you can, if you're talking to a collaborator or a contemporary who has a bigger community than you do, which maybe if you're just getting started, might be everyone, people aren't just going to freely give that up, right? Unless they're feeling super charitable, they're not going to just put you in front of their hard-earned audience or community. In order to get in front of them, you really need to deliver something that they want. And there are lots of things that your collaborator might want. You got to feel into that and use your empathy muscles and your emotional intelligence to decide what's important to them. But usually, people who run communities want what's best for their community, right? That's why they've got a big community behind them. So if you can give something of value to that community, maybe you teach a really helpful class, or you give a really amazing free asset to that group of people, or you go on an Instagram live with that community leader and you teach something, or you talk about your experience and you deliver value or inspiration to other people and who are in the community of the person that you're trying to connect with. All of that is really valuable. And as a community leader, they're going to want to share that and spread that with their community, with their audience, right? You can sort of build off of other people's hard work, blood, sweat, and tears, and move a lot more quickly when you leverage other people's audiences and you deliver value and you're yourself. And one caveat here, don't just go like willy-nilly pitching people different ideas to get in front of their audience to either teach class or give them a free ebook or something like that. Really, you want to connect with people who are going to have similar communities to the community type of people that you want to curate, so that there's overlap there in that Venn diagram of their community and your community. And remember, scarcity mindset, what capitalism sort of like inculcates in us, is that there can only be one. But in reality, there's room for all of us. Again, like we have overlapping communities. I'm part of so many different communities, and they are not in competition with each other, even when they feel like they might be in direct competition with each other, right? I can go to 2 yoga studios. I'm part of both of those communities. I can be part of both of those communities and love them both. They are not in competition with each other. I don't go to yoga, but like you get the drift. So don't be afraid to reach out and connect and collaborate. And the biggest like pro tip I can give after doing this for so long is actually create a genuine relationship with someone. Don't just use them for business or for growing your own community. Really try to get to know them and continue a relationship. If you can continue a business relationship, that can that is so valuable. That's invaluable, not just to your work, but also, you need community too as a leader. Find the people around you who are in a similar position who you can talk to and brainstorm with and bounce ideas off of. That's really important. I also, find that pitching can be really challenging. I'm a projector, so I don't really like to pitch myself. I usually make someone else do it for me. But I have this amazing email formula that works every single time. It just like fucking crushes, dude. It is so successful. And I want to make sure that you get it. If you go to the show notes, there will be a link, and just click on that link and it will take you to a download where you can download that email template. This email template is what I use for pretty much every single partnership that I try to facilitate, and it works like a charm. It's amazing. Go grab it. It will just be helpful. Even if you're not going to email people, if you're going to hop on a phone call with them, or if you're going to meet them in person, it will give you a vibe for how these relationships, how you can sort of kick off these relationships. So go to the link in our show notes to grab that and start building your partnerships and start building your community. Finally, really create relationships with your superfans. I touched on superfans earlier, but they are the homegrown heroes, the people in your community who are like the Uber connectors, who want to just sing your praises from the top of the mountain and bring all their friends and their family into your community. And they are the best. The way that you can create real relationships with superfans is by getting to know them and truly caring about them, and then figure out how you can under promise and over deliver to them, how you can surprise and delight them, how you can go out of your way to make them feel special or heard or seen, because that's all that we really want as human beings, right? We want to be seen. And there's a pretty good chance that if your super fans have something to say to you, that it's valid feedback or information about your community. Because remember, these people care about it almost as much as you do. Another thing that I would think about while building my superfan relationship is, how can I make this more magical? How can I make our relationship more magical? How can I make what I deliver to them feel more magical? How can I just take this above and beyond in everything that I do and surprise and delight them? And that will build you superfans for life when you are able, again, to surprise people. Finally, most importantly, this should be the first thing that I said. I would elevate my community and the people within it before myself, because they are the heroes of your story. Like I said, not you. You're not the hero of the story. They are. And so elevating your community members, shining a light on them, celebrating them is integral to the success and the connection of your community. Because without them, you don't have community, dude. It's just you with a computer. So boring. So celebrate them and see them and connect with them and have fun. It's really awesome to connect with amazing people. And building a community is something that definitely takes time. It takes practice. You'll have, some waffles here and there, but it's so worth it. And like I said at the top of this episode, when you have a community, you can go anywhere. You can do anything. And as long as you're listening to those people who are in your network, who are surrounding you, and you're really hearing them, and you're empathizing and intuiting what their problems are, and you're trying to find solutions for them, you'll always find success. Because when we're tapped into our clients and the people that we're here to serve, then we really can't go off the path. So trust your intuition and trust your gut and trust your empathy muscle when you're connecting with this group. It's also important to being an amazing intuitive business owner, but more importantly, to like being a human being. And I think that's what we all want. that's it. Those are my recommendations and what I would do if I was starting from scratch, building a brand new community, and what I wish I hadn't done. But also, some of the things that I'm in hindsight pretty proud of the decisions I made, especially because I had a lot of people telling me that I was doing it all wrong and that I wasn't focusing on the right stuff. But I'm so proud of where holisticism is today, and I'm so more importantly, like honored to know the people that are in this community. So I want to hear from you. Hit me up. You can send me a text at the number in the show notes. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this week's episode. And make sure that you download that freebie with the email partnership template for snagging your first partnership and beginning to build your community. And if you liked this podcast episode, yay, I'm so happy to hear it. You can rate, review, and subscribe to the 12th House. This really helps us get up on the charts. We're a brand new podcast and we're a bit buried right now. So we are so grateful for any help that we can get. If you take a screenshot of your review and then you text it to the number in the show notes, I will surprise you with a special little treat. So hopefully that's an ethical bribe. And I just want to say thank you for listening to this episode and being part of our community. You really make our world go round at Holisticism, and you're why we wake up every morning and do what we do. So thanks for listening, and I will see you next week.